Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter, also known as dotNetDave. This is show number 37. I'm really excited about this show. We had a week off last week because of the cloud conference, and now we're back. I'm back with Christos Matskas. I told you I'm probably going to mess up your name when the show happens. A program manager at Microsoft. And so I'm excited about that. And we had some other good things, including new code rules at the end of the show. I hope you'll stay around for that. And also, of course, the giveaway at the end of the show for everybody who's watching the show out there. So you all get free software just for watching the show. Easy, huh? So I hope you all having a great weekend. It's a kind of a gloomy day here in San Diego. Hopefully the sun will come out a little bit later. But I hope it's all going good where you are. I hope the weather's okay. I hope that pandemic is doing better in your neck of the woods. And but let's get the show going. Speaking of the Cloud Summit, I did want to talk a little bit about it. I don't know if you've watched it. If you didn't watch the Cloud Summit, I don't know what's wrong with you. It was 11 straight days of cloud topics for free. And I jumped on and off, and all the sessions I watched were awesome. All the speakers that I watched were awesome. There were a lot of great questions, and I tweeted a bunch during, the Cloud Summit. And, I tweeted a couple of things like, this has to be the largest, virtual conference of all time, probably. And it has to be, it's by far the most diverse conference that I watched. Or been to, because we had people from, all over the world at this conference, from countries I've never really heard from speakers before, virtually at least. And so I thought it was a great success. I'm sure the sponsors thought it was a great success. I thought Simon, who produces my show, did a phenomenal job. Why he's still live is beyond me. How one person can run a virtual conference for 11 days is really beyond me. I think it's only because he's a lot younger than I am. So I could never do it. I ran, a conference in June, and by the end of that, I was, punch drunk and grumpy, and it took me like 2 days to recover. So Simon, hands off to you. You did an awesome job. And so the early numbers for the conference I wanted to share for the first time. This conference was also streamed on Microsoft Learning, and this conference was the first non-Microsoft conference ever streamed on Microsoft Learning. So that's pretty cool. But the gears of Microsoft run a little bit slow, and so we don't have the numbers from Microsoft yet on how many people watched. But without those numbers, the conference reached over 30,000. Sorry, I got the numbers wrong. 300,000 viewers. That's just amazing. I just want to say that publicly and out loud because I've never heard of numbers like that before. I would venture to guess even Bill doesn't even get numbers like that. So 300,000 viewers for free at 11-day conference. That's just phenomenal. So if you're watching the show, please reach out to Simon and Mahesh and thank them for putting on this awesome resource for all of you for free. And they've already vowed to be back next year. I know we've been talking about maybe doing a couple days in person. I'm trying to sway Mahesh to do that in Sweden so I can hang out with my really good friend Magnus Martinsson from Sweden. I miss him. Well, I miss all of you, but I miss Magnus too because he's a fellow speaker and I always have a great time with him. So anyway, if you haven't watched the Cloud Summit, go watch the part 1 and part 2 for each day are up on the web now on YouTube. If Simon wants to put that out there. And right now, Simon and his team are cutting up the days into the individual sessions. And so hopefully that'll be out next week. So anyway, congrats to everybody who put on the show. Congrats to all the speakers, and of course, thanks to all the viewers who watched. So I'm down to the last 2 weeks of begging you to submit your food recipes to the Hello World Cookbook.com. I've been promoting this for 2 years now, and I basically time boxed this project to the 2 years I bought the domain. So that runs out in a couple of weeks. So if I don't get a lot more recipes in 2 weeks, unfortunately, this project is going to it's not going to go away, but I'm going to put it on the back burner. So one, I just want to share, this book is all about technical people who know how to cook, sharing their recipes from all over the world. And you all know I love Indian food, so I wish I had more Indian food recipes. But this is to not only showcase that, some of us can actually cook. I was actually a cook at a restaurant at 18 years old and actually ran a restaurant when I was 19 years old. So I've been cooking my whole life pretty much. And I know some of you, like Magnus, can cook. And so please submit your recipes. Please take a few moments this weekend to write down your recipes and send them through the website. Because 100% of the proceeds, including if I do merchandise and things like that, will go to the Voice of Slum NGO in India. You know that I've had you all know that currently 100% of my Code Performance book profits go to the Voice of Slum every month, so they can keep their vocational training going. And so this is just another effort that I'm doing to raise money for this really, really worthwhile nonprofit group in Delhi who targets kids from who live in the slums from India to pick them up and make their lives better. I visited the Voice of Slum in Delhi, India, 2.5 years ago, and it was pretty much the most moving experience I've ever had traveling the world. So this is my effort to help this help the two people who really started this great NGO and orphanage. And I hope you'll come with me in this journey. And if you don't know how to cook, I still need more help. I need editors because, someone pointed out on Twitter this week that, I've misspellings in my book. So I need editors. I need graphic artists. And I also need unit testers to test the recipes because I want to make sure they're all good before I put out the book. And I eat gluten-free, so I can only eat the gluten-free one. So anyway, please go to helloworldcookbook.com and please help support this worthy cause. I forgot to hide that one. Sorry about that. So I've been working really hard on taking my Code Performance book and putting it online for you all. And you can go to that URL right there and you can go check out. I wrote a new article a couple days ago about, what did I write about? I forget, but it's there. And that's the first article that actually has a benchmark test for .NET 5 and .NET 6. And it's about string dot is null or empty. So if you want to see, the not only the benchmark for is null or empty, but you can see if it's improved, between .NET 5 and .NET 6. So go to that page. The article's there. I hope you check it out. So before I bring on the guest, I want to make sure you all know this is your show. It's not my show, even though my name is in the title. This is your show. Simon and I put this show on for you every week to help you. And the only way that you can get help is by asking questions. And so it's really easy. You can type. We don't see you. It's not like you have to ask in person because I know a lot of people don't like to, ask questions in person. So please type your questions for Christos, and because this is going to be a great show all about security. And this is something that, we all need to worry about these days. I did a new code rules, I think last time on security. And, but that's about security that, we have to deal with as developers, security that gets in our way, meaning, Okta and things like that. logging into our virtual machines and stuff like that. But today we're going to talk about, I think, securing. We're going to talk about securing apps with Microsoft Identity Platform. So I'm really looking forward to that. So get your questions ready. Type them in now because it takes like 10 seconds to come through the system. And with that, I'm going to bring on my guest, Christos Matskas. Is a software developer, dad, blogger, husband, speaker, and all-around geek. He currently works as a developer advocate for Microsoft Identity, helping developers and teams leverage power of the identity and cloud. He's been building software for over 16 years and is a passionate open source advocate. He contributes regularly to numerous open source projects and works closely with developer community to make space bigger and better. So welcome, Christos.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah, sure. So you're joining us from Seattle?
I am, where the weather is slightly better and it's not gloomy this morning, which is surprising.
Yeah, no gloom today. Wow.
No gloom.
I figured, yeah. Well, your rainy season's coming up pretty soon.
Don't tell people. We don't want them to come here in Seattle, right? Because I came here for the first time in 2016 in the summer, and I was expecting, rain and misery, and it was a stunning summer week. So I think people have been lying to us, and that's the case. I mean, Seattle is fantastic. You get 4 seasons more or less, which is great.
Yeah. Well, Seattle, yeah, that's kind of the trick with Seattle. If you go in the summer and go, "Wow, it's so great here," and come back in October, November, it never stops freaking raining, right?
Yeah, it is like that. Although I come from Scotland, where the weather is significantly more rainy than here, so I have to say that people that are complaining in Washington should actually visit Seattle before they set their mind. But hey, it's good. It's a good day. It's a Saturday morning, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I always think it's hilarious because in San Diego we don't get enough rain, and so it doesn't rain very much here. And it actually rained yesterday, which is really weird. And I think I got 5 emergency broadcasts on my TV yesterday. I was going, okay, stop it. We know it's going to rain. But, but rain in San Diego is like drips. It's not like monsoon heavy downpour most of the time. But I always think it's funny that if it rains like more than 2 days in San Diego, everybody starts whining and complaining, and I'm going, oh, shut up.
People are never happy with the weather, trust me.
I know. We have the best weather in the country, and it rains 2 days and you start complaining about it.
Oh well, it is what it is. We like to complain about the weather.
Yeah, actually in San Diego, when I go to Microsoft every year for the MVP Summit, I know there have been a few times that people, and because Microsoft has now picked like the crappy time of the year to hold the summit. My friends go, "You're going to Seattle? The weather is crappy," and I go, "I want crappy weather. I need the crappy weather to make me feel better about
being stuck inside for all day.
The paradise I live in, right?"
Yes. Yeah, true. Besides, if the weather is nice, you don't want to be stuck inside listening to sessions. You want to be outside exploring.
Yeah. That's why a lot of things have trouble, like the arts and sports and things like that in Southern California, because it's, let's go indoors or let's go out to the beach. It's pretty, it's pretty no brainer.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah. So today we're going to be, and don't forget everybody to type in your questions. We don't have any questions yet. So today we're going to be talking about securing apps with the Microsoft Identity Platform. So let's get into that. What do you want to share about the Identity Platform and why we should be using it, and maybe we can talk about how that works with not only cloud apps but
any app.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, this is a 6 trillion industry that we need to combat, right? Cybercrime in 2021 is expected to hit 6 trillion, which is about 3.8 million per company in the world. $3.8 million of damage to companies out there. And unfortunately, we're not learning a lesson. I've been coding for 16, 17 years, and we're still seeing the same mistakes. Like SQL injection is still sitting at the very top of the always top 10. Like, it's still 2021 and we're still writing crappy code, which goes to show that there's a long way ahead of us. And for for security specialists, security aware people, this is probably the biggest challenge. And it is a mindset. It's like DevOps, right? I think security is the new DevOps of this time, where we need to change the culture rather than the tools and the way that we do it. So ideally, as we look into building apps, developers should also be thinking about how the code or the lines that are right can impact the security of the app and the security of the enterprise that they're doing it for, or the customer's data, right? It's not always just about your company. It's about your customer's data. And in many cases, once you lose the trust of your customers, then you're out of the game.
Yeah, that actually happened to me this week. I got a letter from the hospital group that I've been seeing since the 80s.
Wow.
My information got leaked out, and
yes.
And after doing a short contract at the university, which this hospital is part of, I know exactly why, because they hire the worst people there, and I mean, the cheap, well, I'm not saying you're bad if you're cheap. I'm just saying they want to go for the beginners and stuff. And with someone as important as security, you can't hire beginners, to run your security, right?
Yeah.
And even, this year I was looking for a new job for like 3+ months this year. And I had 2 interviews with 2 local credit unions here in San Diego. And both of them were trying to cheap out on the people they were hiring. They were trying to bring all their development back in-house because they use third-party vendors and they're sick of them. But they wanted to cheap out. They wanted to pay me basically to be like director of development, and they wanted to pay me basically the same pay that beginners get.
Graduate developer at the director level. Yeah.
And I'm going, you're a financial institution and you're trying to be cheap. Come on. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I totally feel that around. It's we are actually turning quite a few new developers in the industry, and a lot more people are coming in, but they don't have the fundamentals to understand. Like even university today or college, whatever you want to call it, we don't teach security as part of the main modules, right? We don't teach the things that people need in the when they get into the industry. You get your first job. Like when I graduated and went into my first job, we were actually developing against the production database. We didn't even have backups or anything. I mean, and it was because I didn't know any better, right? You learn from the hard mistakes. And what we're trying to avoid here is for developers to make the hard mistakes, especially when it comes to security, because once you make that mistake, it's hard to go back and fix it, especially with security. Like if somebody owns your infrastructure because there was a backdoor, or you open to a SQL injection, or you put your admin password was admin or admin no passwords, which has happened before, then it becomes a playground for hackers. And there are so many places that back in the day it was you had to infiltrate the network to be able to get access to resources. These days everything is running on the cloud, so everything is a public endpoint. Your storage account is a public endpoint. Your web apps are a public endpoint. Your mobile apps are a public endpoint. Your JavaScript code, your SPA applications, the whole code is running on the browser. So you screw something up there, you put a secret or an API key, suddenly everything becomes available to the end user. Not to mention source code, right? People are checking in stuff on GitHub, and then all that information becomes available to the attackers. Then you have the end users that are not careful in how they create accounts and how they manage their accounts, where they use passwords and usernames across the board. That also gives attackers another attack surface to go after. And so on and so on. So my job is to hopefully educate developers in writing slightly more secure software, and at least eliminate some of these attack vectors by using services that they can leverage to do the job better while they focus on other things. And that is, authenticating your users, or it could be accessing resources across the cloud or across clouds by not having any secrets there, or doing secure DevOps. And there are so many layers on security, right? It's just not just one. So developers need to think in layers as well. So it's, somebody makes it through the door, they come into my application. What can they do in the application? So authorization takes place. And then once they're authorized, which resources can they access via themselves or via the app, and what kind of permissions do I give those accounts to go and access resources, and so on and so on. So lots of layers.
Yeah, and I'm sure the people that watch me a lot probably will say this. Oh, Dave, you're always talking about the old days. Well, because I've been doing this a long time, and so. But I've been thinking about security more lately, and the one thing that I have to say that back when I started, back in the 90s, we basically only had, at least in the Windows world, we basically only had two ways of doing security. Either you were using Active Directory, or you rolled it into your own database, schema thing, right? That was pretty much it. That. And we had HTTPS, and even back then, HTTPS was so slow we had to buy outboard machines to process it because the PCs weren't or the servers weren't beefy enough to do it, so we had to do it out external to the servers themselves. But back then we had a few choices. Now we have so many choices. Whenever I think about doing like putting security in an app, like I have an app for developers that I'm trying to get a new version out, and I get paralyzed, with all the choices and which is the best one. And I don't really need to secure it that much, but I want a little bit of security. So what do I use that's easy and pretty much free? And so now maybe we can talk about some of those things, but sure. It's a daunting process. And
it is.
And before I forget, I think, one mistake, like in my past, one mistake that I always have said over and over again, that, any team needs to have a dedicated, a database, BI guy, right? Developers write the worst databases, right? Every crappy database that I've seen has been developed by a developer, right? And so for years and years and years, I've been trying to get companies to make sure we have a dedicated full-time, DBA. And I feel security has gotten like that now, right? Yes. You basically, you can't just leave it up to the normal developer. You need to hire an expert, whether, they're in-house if you're a large enough company, or you hire, a consultant to come in and help you out with it. But to me, you can't just leave it up to a normal developer anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. Developers will probably be the laziest ones. Like, I'm a developer, and it's not their fault. I was, funny enough, this week I was looking at MongoDB with Node.js and Cosmos DB. So I was like, what it would take for a Node app or Node API to access the Cosmos DB via the Mongo API, right? So I'm using the Mongo API, not the SQL API for Cosmos DB. So if you don't know what Cosmos DB is, for the audience, it is a NoSQL database, but it provides different kind of interfaces. So if you have a MongoDB and you want to move the cloud and scale it out, you can actually migrate it to Cosmos and then use the Mongo API. Okay. And because Mongo was new to me, I was looking at the docs, and every single doc that we have across all the languages, including Node and JavaScript, was actually using the connection string that has the username and password embedded into the application. And fine, Node.js is running on a server, so it's supposed to be more secure or confidential client. But at the same time, you are actually storing potentially the production keys into your source code, and you're making it available. And this is in the docs. So if you go into the Azure docs and you look for that, this is how they recommend doing the code. Now I'm working with the team to change that, to pull it from Key Vault. And I'm also asking, why can we not use managed identity to eliminate the need to have that connection string? But at the same time, you're absolutely right. Developers will go, okay, what did I find on Stack Overflow? What does the official doc say? And if Microsoft says that, then I don't see a harm in there. So, something to think about. Whereas the architect or somebody that is security aware will like, whoa, what are you doing here? We don't want you to be accessing the API, or the database through those keys or through that connection string. And I also don't want to give you an account that has full access to my Cosmos. I want you to, have restricted access, maybe read only for your account, or for forever for whoever is signing in this application. So you're right. We need to have dedicated people, or at least someone within every team that can look into that. In some cases, I say it's the security team, if you work for a large organization, should be part of your sprint. As you plan for the next 2 or 3 weeks, however long your sprints are, They need to be part of the conversation of the planning. And as you select your work items and do your sprint planning, they need to be asking, what is the security implication of this feature that you're building? And then there needs to be a checklist. So when you submit or commit that PR, there's also a security check to make sure that you haven't included any keys and you've done it securely and it scales out and you use least privilege and so on and so on. You're right. I mean, there's paralysis by analysis here because there's so many things that you need to think about. So where do you start?
Yeah, that's what you even kind of reminded me of, the last company I worked for, they used Okta for security. And, I have to say the Okta docs are not good, as far as .NET is concerned. And I just had the hardest time just trying to figure out the simplest things with Okta. And I'm going, really? Okta is supposed to be this big thing that everybody, is using these days, but I can't find any like real world examples to show me how to do this properly. It's all the demo crap. And I don't want to use the way they do it in the demos, right?
Yeah, you're right. And the problem with most of the docs out there are that they're focusing on feature, not scenarios. And this is one of the biggest things that we've been working with my team and the docs team in this past year is about working on scenarios. As a developer, I want to build X. And it's usually I want to build a web app that accesses something else, an API, or even that I want to access an API, that API then calls into SQL. So that end-to-end scenario on how to do it securely, it's nowhere to be found. So unless somebody writes a blog post about it, the docs will either say, this is how you authenticate a web app. And then there will be another another document, if you know what you're looking for, that says, and this is how you secure an API. And then there'll be another totally separate document somewhere else that will say, this is how you can securely access SQL via .NET or whatever code you use. And that end-to-end scenario is nowhere to be found. So one of the things that me and JP, my partner in crime, have been doing in the last year is using the 4 to 5 show, which is a Twitch stream, to actually talk about these end-to-end scenarios. If you are building with, say, Blazor, how can you do it securely, and how can you access your resource securely? Or if you're building with, if you're using the new .NET 6 APIs, the minimal APIs, which are awesome, how can you secure your APIs, and how can you access resource securely? And then other languages as well. But this is where we try to add value, to talk about the end-to-end scenarios. And I don't think Okta is at fault. I think everyone out there that is building documentation lacks that kind of a developer mindset, right? And I think that this is where developer advocates can come in and add value by saying we need to look into scenarios and not into feature docs, right? But at the same time, you also need the feature docs. So it's like, what do I do? And where do I put everything?
And I've said this before, but security needs to be part of the beginning of the project, not the end of the project, like most of the projects I'm on, or I one time worked for a company that the architect actually said to me, we'll worry about security after we release it. And I'm going, what? Or actually, here, going back to the
good old days.
Going back to the hospital group that, just told me that my information was leaked. Well, I worked on a short contract there for a medical department where I was writing this back end for this new app that was going to be used by tuberculosis patients. And, during that project, the SQL Server had absolutely no security on it, none, right? And neither did the website. And I'm just going, really? We have people's personal, because during that we were going through trials, and we have people's medical information in the SQL database, and if people were just sniffing for that IP address, they would have gotten right into that database, right? And I'm just like you said, kind of like you said at the beginning, why haven't we learned, right? We keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Well, you've been around for a while, so you know that security and performance are always an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. Always. Always at the end.
Yeah, let's push it out, and then if performance is an issue, let's go back and fix it. And you're writing a book on performance, so you know how that you need to do it early on. The later you come into the process, the harder it is to fix performance. And the same with security. I mean, there's no little pregnant or too much pregnant. It's like you're either pregnant or not pregnant. You're either secure or you're not secure. So. And your security is as strong as your weakest link. So you can have, a very hard entry Like people need to authenticate and have MFA and whatever. And then once they're in the application, they can do absolutely everything.
Yep.
Like, they can access the admin portal because it's not well secure, or they can access resources when they shouldn't be accessing resources, or there's no elevation of privilege, and people can go and delete databases because you left things open. Yep. So this is where we talk about security in layers. And, because to be honest, if you become a target, then you're going to be owned one way or another. You're going to be owned. It might take a year or a year and a half, but if you become a target for a hacking group or whatever, then you're done. So the whole point is once they breach through the first wall, what happens then? Right. Is there another security layer that is going to stop them down? And then once they breach that one, is there going to be another security layer, right? Mm-hmm. Eventually, they will either stop somewhere or they will be discovered. And the whole point is to delay them enough so your security team can pick up the logs or identify something going wrong. But we want developers to be aware about all these things that can happen throughout the process.
Yeah. And one thing that I really don't see anybody worry about, and after this we'll get into identity platform, but one thing that and because I had to deal with this, because back in the late 90s, I believe I wrote the actual first real horse wagering program in America. And so we were doing something new and never's been done before. We were having to deal with, not only security, but betting systems and things like that. And one of the things we were telling, some of our partners when they were coming in is, there's actually more of a chance of internal people hacking into it than external, right? And so that's something that people also don't worry about, is the disgruntled employee who's about to leave that goes, I'm going to steal everybody's data and sell it on the internet, and so we have to worry about the internal people too. Not everybody is as honest as we would hope them to be, right?
Well, it can happen by accident. It can happen through malicious intent. There have been many examples where people got fired, and then because they didn't manage the situation well, they went back and deleted databases, or they logged stuff. Like it was an admin in San Francisco where he went and logged all the network stuff, so nobody could access or reconfigure routers, and he didn't disclose the key, so he was actually taken to court and he was put in jail, but he never disclosed that information. So they had to redeploy all the Cisco infrastructure. Wow. And developers should not have access to production systems, and when they do, it should be through elevation of privilege. So just-in-time access, right? Maybe I need to go and fix something, but just in time, and then there should be proper management of secrets. And the fact that there is a way to resolve that, and your code will still work whether you're in development, QA, or production without changing a single line of code, and people don't know about that, that's mind-blowing. Like the fact that you can do all these things and still be secure. In fact, I don't even want to know what the secrets are. I don't even want to know what the username and password to the database is. No, can I actually log in and do my job? Perfect. And then when that code goes to production, ideally there's a different set of credentials, or there's different ways to access the production database, and I don't even need to know that. Mm-hmm. IT admins don't even have to know that. In fact, they can all be managed through, say, Key Vault, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's maybe a break glass emergency where you actually keep your physical passwords in a vault, and then somebody goes and breaks the key. They take the secrets out, they do their job, they fix the bug in production, and then the keys get rolled over. Because you said back in the day, we used to have username and password databases, and they're still around. In fact, they're everywhere. Yep. And the problem with that is that if you don't have a central way of managing those credentials, and in big companies, there are hundreds of databases, if not thousands of databases with different credentials. And there have been situations where people left the company and they still had access to the production admin portal because nobody rolled the secrets or nobody deleted their accounts. And it's very hard, because once you end up in that situation where you manage individual credential databases, it's extremely hard for admins to keep tab on everything that's happening in their organization. I've worked in banks that used to do that, and it was just insane. So there's a better way. So hopefully developers will realize that and don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the importance of security, right? Because I don't think enough people worry about it, or the right people worry about it enough. So let's talk about, how the Microsoft Identity Platform can help us solve this, problem, and hopefully easily.
Well, easily. I mean, it takes only a couple of lines of code to add authentication. Yeah. And in the past, I had to do it myself, right? In 2007, I was consulting, so I got a project, and we had to sign in users. So my thought was like, I'm going to create a username and password database. How hard can it be? I'm going to hash it properly. I'm going to secure it properly. And then the project lead came to me and said, oh, we need to add MFA. I was like, okay, I need to roll my own MFA thing now. And I started working on that. It's hard. Like, how do you manage brute force attacks? How do you manage intercepted emails? How do you manage one-time passwords? And how do you create them? And how do you send them? And how do you scale that platform as well? So, all these things that developers have to think about, they're managed by the service. So the Microsoft Identity Platform is, in effect, it's an identity service that allows developers to add authentication and authorization to their applications by using any OpenID Connect library or OAuth 2 library, or using the Microsoft Authentication library, MSAL, and delegate that responsibility to another service. So you get scalability, reliability, and security. And all you care about as a developer is adding that little bit of code. And the nice thing about that is that if the company wants to enforce MFA to all the accounts, then the IT admin that manages the Azure Active Directory will go and switch that on. If users want to elect to use FIDO keys to hardware authenticate using a FIDO key, they can do that. If we want to switch on passwordless, that's all done. You don't have to change your code. That's the beauty of that. If we want to implement things like super advanced continuous access evaluation, where we want to ensure that if somebody leaves the company or somebody is not in the Active Directory anymore, they don't have access to resources, even though they still have a valid access token.
Right.
Then this is, again, something I don't have to worry about. The platform will take care of that. And then you have like super advanced things like token binding for, to ensure that the application that actually got the token is the only one that can actually use the token, and not somebody that intercepted the token and now they can replay that or use it. So all these things that you don't have to think about are delegated to the identity service. And for Microsoft Identity, that's either organizational accounts, so at Contoso, at Microsoft, at whatever your company name is, if you're signing into your organization, or if you're using things like Azure Active Directory B2C, external accounts, your Outlook, your Gmail, your social media login, or even any other OpenID Connect compliance service.
Yeah,
which is perfect.
Yeah. So is the Microsoft Identity Platform, is that a cloud service, or you can also have it locally, or how's it work actually?
So Azure Active Directory, which is neither Azure nor Active Directory, it's still a service that runs on the cloud. You get it for free. If you have an Azure subscription, it's free for you. You already have an Azure Active Directory. You have to have one, in fact. Yeah. If you have Office at your work, then you also have an Active Directory, an Azure Active Directory, and that allows you to roll out authentication. Now, you can use Azure Active Directory to authenticate mobile apps, desktop apps, web apps, and they don't have to live on the cloud. So I can have a desktop app that runs locally on my machine that authenticates against Azure Active Directory. I can have an API that runs behind, say, API management or some other tool that actually also authenticates against Azure Active Directory. As long as they have access to the internet, they can authenticate. That's the only limitation.
Well, I'm already really happy you're on the show because I'm learning a lot, but we don't have any questions yet. But we do have a comment from Steven, my producer. Domino leaked my data. Now the world knows my contact number and address and email. Well, Simon, that's what you get for eating at Domino's. That's all I got to say.
that was tough love there. Yeah. Also, Steven, it's not our fault you like pineapple on your pizza. I mean,
oh, I love pineapple.
You
Pineapple
do?
and Canadian, yeah, pineapple and Canadian ham. Oh man,
I don't know if we can be friends now. As a European, I don't know if it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what do Italians feel about pineapple on pizza.
I wouldn't want to know.
We don't want to ask them, right?
But because I eat gluten-free, I rarely have pizza anymore. But when I did eat pizza, I would have that every once in a while. So I'd like a special treat.
It is a special treat because too many calories, my friend. I think if you check like one full Domino's pizza, it's something like 1,200 calories, which is
yeah. So someone just posted a picture today on Twitter that it's a pizza from, what country is that from? I want to say, I don't want to say it's Italy, but somewhere over there. It actually looked like a pie. It looked like this big thick pie.
Are you sure that's not Chicago pizza?
No. It's some European thing. And,
I don't think I've ever seen it.
I have to go back and see if I can find that tweet. But yeah, I was going, man, that doesn't even look good. Because like, you know, when Domino's or usually Pizza Hut does this, they do that deep dish thing and they show the pictures. I go, that looks disgusting. Even in the advertisements, it looks disgusting.
Yeah, we're not getting any funding or sponsorship from Domino's or Pizza Hut, but I think we can survive there, right?
Yeah.
That's not our audience.
So anyway, do you have I know I know it's we have like 20 minutes left. Do you have like a quick demo you can show us on how easy this is to set up? Okay.
You said the right word there. Right. I'm all about demos, so I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Yes, and then that one.
Hopefully Simon's not in the bathroom.
In the meantime, there you go. So I'll start with this one because this is very important. Now, we talked about Azure Active Directory, and we said that it's part of your tenant. So if you are working with Azure, if you're working with Office, then you do have one. However, organizational Azure Active Directories tend to be quite locked down, or ideally they're locked down by your admins. So you can't go and check everybody's calendar, for example, through your app, right? Because that requires quite a privileged permission in your Active Directory. If you want to work with Active Directory and play around and have full access to a P1 Azure AD, the Microsoft 365 Developer Program allows you to sign up or join. It gives you a free P1, so it's a full-blown Azure Active Directory with sample data. So it gives you SharePoint, it gives you OneDrive, it gives you event and calendar stuff. So when you do demos, you don't have to worry about populating the data. It gives you fake accounts. And the whole point there is that it allows you to do the full development on a test tenant, and then you can take that and take it back to your org and say, I have it working now. These are the permissions that we need, and it makes your life a lot easier as a developer. Otherwise, you have to go usually ask for. I mean, at Microsoft, it's a whole process. Takes weeks to get elevation of permissions for certain things. So this allows us to do a lot of things. Now, when it comes to Azure Active Directory, there are two things that you need to care about. One is going into the Azure Active Directory, which I have over here, and creating an app registration. The app registration, in effect, shows the intent that you're going to use Azure Active Directory to authenticate users against it. And you can, let's make a new one. Let's call it Rockin Code, and then register one. At this point, we don't really have anything other than the application ID and the client ID and the tenant ID, which we need to use in the application, but it's in the authentication that the magic happens, right? Here you say, you know what, I want to sign in a web app, or I want to sign in users through an SPA, or I'm using iOS or macOS or Android or mobile apps. And this can be any language, .NET, Java, Python. We provide you with the MSAL library to work with, or you can bring your own library. So here we're going to do a web app, and we're going to say the redirect is going to be HTTPS. And I know you'll ask me soon how I got this, but
while he's typing that, everybody, don't forget to ask questions. We have a security expert. I want questions. Come on.
IDC. And then we'll configure that. And now we have the redirect. This in effect tells the Azure Active Directory, when I sign in users using this app registration, any tokens I get, I want you to send them back to this endpoint. So my application needs to be listening at this endpoint. So here, if I go to CD projects, I'm going to create a .NET project. I think it's going to be a .NET 6. So we're going to do .NET new. We'll say web app. For authentication, --auth, we'll say single org because that's what I have configured. So I'm going to use Azure Active Directory, not B2C. And then we're going to name it Rockin Code. And this is going to create the web app. It will add the authentication components that we need. And I'll show you the code here very shortly. So in the new world of .NET, authentication is probably one of the easiest things that you can implement. You don't need to know anything about tokens, protocols, or whatever. So in here, there you go. There's an app. There's a number of settings that you need to configure. That is telling the application, the code, where to go to authenticate. Right. So here we're saying, what domain do you want to use? I'm going to use my domain because I am vain. And that can be a fully qualified domain name if you want to map a DNS name there. The tenant ID is coming from the app registration. So if we go back, to our app registration. In the overview, we're going to grab the tenant ID or the client or directory ID. Obviously, we can't be consistent with our naming, so it's Microsoft. And then we're going to grab the client ID. And then I'm going to jump into the code. Now, remember how we said HTTPS, localhost 5001, sign in, OIDC? This needs to match what we have in the app registration. Otherwise, the app registration will say, somebody tried to authenticate. I'm trying to send the token back, but it seems like it's going to a different URL. And that's super dodgy. So what happens is that needs to be consistent both in the application and the app registration. You can change it to be whatever you want, as long as they are consistent.
So,
and then
before you move off of this, because this is, I've tweeted about this recently, because whenever I try to get the new version of my app out for developers, because it now uses Cosmos DB and microservices and things like that. And the place I get stuck at is, okay, in that JSON, in that app config, where in the app settings.json, you have all the information, but what precludes somebody from taking that information and just using it on their machine? And you're saying it's the callback path.
Yeah.
So even if they put in a different callback path, it won't work for them.
No.
Okay.
You'll probably get an error message saying there's a mismatch of URLs and stuff like that. So
see, that's, how long I searched for that kind of answer and I couldn't find one. And maybe it's just the words I was using to search for. But I mean,
I feel your pain.
Answered months of pain of me trying to figure this out in 5 seconds.
I feel your pain. There's a lot of esoteric terms within the identity, and we haven't talked about tokens or protocols or flows or whatever, because I don't want to get into the weeds of that. Yeah. Because in most cases, you're going to do what I'm doing here and then move on to the next task. I mean, you're more than welcome to spend 6 months or 6 weeks or 2 weeks learning about OAuth flows and what OpenID Connect stands for. But for most developers, this is a lot of esoteric stuff that you don't know until you hit a bug or until you hit an error that, like, why am I getting this and what's happening? And this is where you need to get help. So if you need to get help, we have a Discord channel, the 4to5 show, so people can jump in there and then you can ask our engineering team or other experts in the community to get answers. And it's a super active community. I'm happy to share the links. So
okay, great.
We have the app settings here, which is all great. Now let's go and check the code. So in the code, let me hide this so we can see more code. In here, all the magic happens on line 11. So this is where we actually bootstrap authentication in our application. This is the one we say, when we need to authenticate, we need to use the section from the config to wire everything up. And then every time a user needs to come in, this is what we're going to use to authenticate. So the new Microsoft Identity.web library makes our life a lot easier. In fact, we can make our life even a lot easier by removing all that and going with even more defaults. Add Microsoft.
In Visual in .NET, is it as easy to add this kind of security to like a WinForms app or WPF as you're showing here in ASP.NET?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean,
sure.
in the older non-.NET Core code. So if you're writing .NET Core code, then yes. Now for web forms, you need to use the old global ASICs and then the startup, so you can actually wire up the OWIN things. So it does the authentication. It's not as simple. Like we took a lot of the complexities there and we compressed it and we hid it behind API calls, right? So in here, what's happening now is we're saying, authenticate my web app and use my default settings. And then in here, we have a default authorization policy that says everyone that comes into our website, the first thing they have to do is authenticate. Then they can access things. But you can also change individual pages to allow anonymous access. So you don't have to always authenticate users. And then this is all it is. And then finally down here, if you don't use the bootstrapping code, then all you have to do is just make sure they have the user authentication what's it called, statement for the bootstrapping. So I'll save this one and then we're going to run it. Simple as that. So as you saw, 4 lines of configuration, 1 line of code, and a little bit of config inside Azure Active Directory. And when I press the button here, it's opening in a different window. Let's take it up here. Am I running Blazor Wasm still somewhere? I have a window running Blazor Wasm somewhere. Oh, that's not good. But that wouldn't bind there. That's interesting.
It's okay. It's not a good demo unless it fails, right?
Indeed. But I thought I closed everything down. So do I have another terminal somewhere? No, I don't have a terminal somewhere. It shouldn't opening. Oh, you know what? I wonder if. Damn. I don't see any other process running.
Yeah, I don't see any windows open that would cause it.
I need task manager. So let's see. I wonder if under task manager we can see anything running there. More details. Let's see. Do you have any .NET? I don't even see .NET running somewhere.
Does anybody have any like last minute question you want me to answer? Because we're gonna have to go probably after this demo. So drop your questions in. I know Simon's been bugging you guys.
Simon's complaining about pizza, I think.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see that. It's unfortunate. What the hell happened there? Let's end task. I wonder if there's some leftover task running from terminal. Or you know what? We can run this one. I wonder if that. Although it's running on the same port, so problems. Comments are not. I love how we add comments into JSON and then we actually complain about it. This is super weird. Why is Blazor still running somewhere? Well, that's from a previous demo I was doing earlier on, but this is interesting. I don't think I've seen this before.
I have weird issues. Well, you're not using Visual Studio, but I have weird issues with Visual Studio that something gets stuck and I have to reboot the machine.
Oh, we can't reboot midstream. That would be awful.
Yeah, I know. You can't do that. We're almost out of time anyway. So,
are we out of time? We have
but close. But that's okay. I mean, at least you've shown us how easy it is to set it up, and just for me, what really opened my eyes is just how exactly, because the one good thing about me being in a team, I think, is that I think a lot of the ways of things are going to go bad, right? And so I know a lot of teams don't like that, but it's a good thing to have most of the time. And that's where I always got stuck is, okay, well, if I just put this information in my, app settings.json, then anybody can have access to it. And so how do I secure that part? And that's when I go into an endless loop of, I don't know what to do. Right.
Yes.
But you basically explained it, beautifully, to me at least, on how all that works and how it's safe. So
it is. Well, give me 1 second. We can run the Blazor example. At least if Blazor is running, we might as well demo the Blazor stuff, right? I'm just gonna, or it's my browser that has some weird caching.
And if you guys do, let people, I mean, most apps are secured these days, but make sure you have a way for people to get their password or change their password. I struggled, with a weak, a very well-known website that everybody in America knows. And I could not log into their system. And it took me a week of going back and forth with them before I got access. And by the end of that week, I go, screw it. I don't want to use your website anymore. If this is how bad you are, then I don't want to do it. I'll use somebody else's website. But anyway.
So since Blazor wants to have the center of the stage today and it wants to be demoed, we're running 5001 port. And then the first thing that we do is get prompted for authentication. Now, this is not Azure AD. This is Azure Active Directory B2C. So I'm going to be using my Outlook account that now everyone knows. And then I'm going to sign in. And this allows consumer accounts to come in and sign in, and then it signs me here, so you can see it's working. And then we're going to fetch the data. It is going to fail because it's going to throw a 403 because my API is expecting a different claim. So that demo shows how not only do we secure the front end because there's an API running as well. So we have two things running. The Blazor WASM is running in the front end and pulling data from the API, and the API is secured. So everything is end-to-end. Not only do we let people through the door, but we also check for claims. And in the scope here, I do have a mismatch because I configured my API to throw willingly a 403, so unauthorized. You came in through the door, you're authenticated against Azure Active Directory, but you don't have the right permissions. And this is authorization shown in action. And that's it. So again, the Blazor code is very similar to what we saw before. In fact, all of that is available on our GitHub repo, the 4to5 show GitHub repo. So if you want to grab examples to see how we did Blazor, how we did Server, how we did Wasm, how we do Xamarin and everything else, then it is all available for you with end-to-end scenarios. Always the attention to end-to-end.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. And I've learned a lot in this episode. But we got to kind of wrap it up. I guess everybody that's sleeping. Well, most of the comments come from India, and they're all sleeping now anyway. So it's like 11:30 there or something like that p.m. So, well, not only are they sleeping, but they're partying because it's Saturday night, right? So
it is indeed. Someone has to party,
Yeah. So. Anyway, that was great. I'm really happy you came on because you actually answered something that I needed answered. And so
there you go.
That's not everybody. That's not why I bring people on the show. But I'm glad I finally got an answer to something I've been trying to figure out for a while now. And so I'm definitely going to, use Microsoft Identity Platform for the new version of my app for .NET developers. And so, but this is a big topic. And so, you always have a home if you want to come, talk about security and the identity platform on the show. So if you ever want to come back, let me know. That would be great for you to come back and talk about this more because, we just basically scratched the surface of, security for apps and, Microsoft land or any land really, because you can use it with any platform. But before I go, I always have two questions that I ask my guests before they leave. And I did see people walking behind you and behind there in the window. I was trying to figure out who it was, but I couldn't.
Probably my wife.
Yeah. So what do you do for fun besides coding and security?
Oh, I'm preparing for a triathlon. So these days it's training, working out, and spending time with family, of course, right? So I do my workouts in the morning when everyone's asleep, so I get to spend the rest of the day with them. So I don't sacrifice that. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the focus these days.
I had a girlfriend once who was training for that. It's pretty intensive.
It is.
Yeah. So I wish you luck in your contest.
At the young age of 43, I decided to put some challenges ahead of me.
Yeah. Matt says he would love to understand more about how it works underneath the covers. So we need to have you come back and explain to us how it works underneath the covers, because it's great.
Be careful. Yeah.
We don't have to worry about it too much. But as I tell everybody, especially when you're interviewing for a job, is you need to understand how not only do you need to use it, but you need to kind of understand at least the minimum of how it works underneath the covers, right? So,
yeah, be careful what you ask for, but yeah, happy to come back and talk about all the minute behind, tokens and flows and why and how. But yeah,
right. So this was the beginner show. We'll have you back for an expert show later.
This is the teaching.
Yeah. And do you have anything to plug before you leave?
Mainly our Discord and our Twitch channels. Like we want to help developers achieve more and write more secure software. So Discord is a great community for you to get help. Like David, if you got stuck with that, you could count Discord and ask, and people automatically tell you what you're doing wrong. And the second one is the Twitch, which again, it's a twice weekly show where we actually talk about this and we build them live on the stream, right? We're using function, storage, Azure. Maybe sometimes we're doing non-Azure stuff like AWS and Google Cloud because people are running outside of Azure. So we want developers to write code securely. So make sure to connect and follow us there, and then send us your questions.
Okay, great. And there's two links on the blog page, page for the show with Christos's information. So
yes.
With that, I want to give you back your weekend to your family, and I hope you have a great weekend up there in Seattle. And I can't wait for you to come back on the show someday. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
And thank you for having me. It was great.
Thank you. That was great. Like I said, I always have fun in my shows, but if I can solve a problem I've been trying to figure out, then then it's an awesome show for me. So I can't wait to apply what Christos has taught us today to the app that I'm trying to get out there someday. So so with that, can we go back slides? So thanks again for Christos. And again, everybody who is watching the show can go to devexpress.com/dotNetDave and get your very own free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress. You know, CodeRush is the only refactoring tool I've used in Visual Studio. I really don't use the internal stuff because it's not good enough. And the work I've been doing on my current contract the last couple of weeks is basically all nothing but refactoring. And I can tell you, you know, I've said this before, but especially at the last 2 weeks, CodeRush from DevExpress saves me so much time in refactoring and fixing things. And because, refactoring is just one of those mundane jobs that we do in our life. And it's never really that exciting. It's just, making things better. It's nothing sexy or exciting. So tools like CodeRush from DevExpress really makes that process a lot easier. And it teaches you stuff too. So go check it out. It's a real copy. It's not a, disabled partial copy. It's a real full-blown copy of CodeRush. And I use it every day that I'm coding, and I hope you will too. And if you do use it, let me know how you like it. All right, it's time for new code rules for this week. Welcome, geeks, to new code rules. Today I want to talk about something that's a little bit off topic, but I'll get around to why it applies to apps at the end of new code rules today. So this is really new OS rules today. Operating systems must make it easy to restore apps and user data. The reason this happens is because when I'm working on benchmarking for my code performance book, I start Windows in diagnostics mode because it gets rid of all the extra services and things and just the needed services so I can run my benchmark test. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was having issues yet again with OneDrive, and I couldn't figure out how to restore some folders. And so I thought maybe I can start in diagnostics mode and maybe I can move them that way. So I started in diagnostics mode and I could not log into Windows at all. I researched and I researched and I researched how to fix this. Absolutely nothing worked. And so before I was getting ready for this show, I needed to get Windows working again. So I decided, heck, I'm just going to do a restore and see what happens. So the restore worked. The problem with restore is that, when you do that, all of your apps disappear. So no apps on the computer, except for what comes with the operating system. And much of your user data disappears, including cookies and logins and things like that. It did keep my files, but basically everything was gone. A week later, I needed to run my benchmarks tests, and I started in diagnostics mode, and guess what happened? Again, I could not log into Windows. Research, tried everything, and had to restore again. So twice in 1 week, basically, I had to restore Windows. That was horribly frustrating for me, but just imagine what that is for normal users. So I had to go through the process of reinstalling all my apps, Chrome to run the show. I had to start relogging on to all the websites and apps that I use, and some of the logins I forgot. And on one website, it took them a week to help me get logged back in because their resetting the password didn't work. So Microsoft and Apple need to make this really, really easy for any user to restore their operating system and keep all of their apps and all of their user data and all of their files. I know this is possible. The reason is because I've had a Mac ever since about 2005. And the one thing I'm very, very impressed with Apple is when you buy a new Mac, the first thing the new Mac says is, do you have an old Mac? You say yes, and you plug in a cable. They used to be FireWire, now I think it's USB-C. You plug in a cable and say, okay. And it says, okay, what do you want to move over? And you can select all your apps, all your data, all those kind of things. And you have to wait an hour or two, but at the end of the hour or two, your machine works. Everything works, including Wi-Fi. It's really amazing that Apple does this, but Microsoft doesn't. The only problem with Macs is, even though this is a great feature when you get a new computer, Macs don't have a restore option. So I'm not sure why, but they need to basically get the same restore, kind of like what Windows does, but keep all the apps. So again, Apple and Microsoft needs to make this really simple for any user, like my grandma, to be able to do this. When I was thinking about this, I thought of the dummies books, and it needs to be that simple. You shouldn't need to read anything. You shouldn't need to go to the website. You should just press a couple buttons and have the operating system do it for you. So Apple and Microsoft, you have to work on this. Apple, you're almost there. You just need to implement the restore feature. Microsoft, you have a lot of work to do. So Microsoft Windows, you need to make this as easy to move all files, user data, and apps to a new computer. And while I know this probably doesn't sell operating systems, Microsoft, if you do this, it could increase sales of Surface and other computers that you sell. Because one of the things that I dread doing almost as much as moving my home is getting a new computer, because then I have to go, I have to reinstall everything. I have to move all my files over. I have to, relog into everything. Nothing, no security, nothing's going to work. So Microsoft, you need to work on this, because I'm sure it'll increase sales. And to bring this back around to development is that, application users, for consumer-based or business-based applications that are installed on the machine. And I think a solution to that, which is possible now, is not storing a lot of data on the machine, if not any at all, and store it all in the cloud. So the next time the app comes up, user logs in, and boom, they have all their configuration, they have all their user data, everything's there. This is possible. It just takes a little bit more work, just takes a little bit more architecture, and we can get there. But Microsoft needs to drive this from Windows down to the app developer. So that's it for this week's new code rules. Let me know your thoughts. I'd like to hear from you on this subject. You can email me there at rockinthecodeworld@csharpcorner.com. And if you want to catch up on the old episodes of new code rules, make sure to go to that URL. And of course, don't forget to watch my show on Saturday morning. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time on New Code Rules. After watching my own new code rules for like the 10th time, I forgot something really important. So, I was complaining that, I couldn't log back into Windows. The biggest problem was once I restarted Windows in diagnostics mode, and there definitely seems to be a bug in Windows with that. So I'm not doing that again, unfortunately. But the problem is, once I restarted in diagnostics mode and I could not log in, I could not find a way to restart it in normal mode. Nothing worked. I tried, getting into safe mode. That didn't work. I tried restarting. I tried to make it start in normal mode. That didn't work. Nothing worked. It always went back to diagnostics mode. Therefore, the login never worked. That's one thing I forgot to put in the video, but now you know. Okay. So thanks for watching. I'm glad you're all here. I want to say that next week is going to be my 1-year anniversary show. I'm really happy about that. I have a great guest. I forget where she lives. Catherine, I think she lives in the Netherlands or someplace. But anyway, I have a great guest for next week. Plus, it's the anniversary show. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to be giving away some cool stuff for the show. And I hope you'll be here because it's my anniversary show. I'll ship it anywhere in the world. So make sure you tune in next week for all the fun and celebrate 1 year of Rockin the Code World with me. Please be safe and listen to your medical professionals with the COVID-19 pandemic. Simon tells me it's doing better in India, but I know we're not out of the woods. The world is not out of the woods with the COVID pandemic. And I know, at least from the last thing I heard on the news here, we're back up to averaging about 2,000 deaths a day in America. And that's just not acceptable. So Make sure you listen to your medical professionals. Please go donate at your local blood bank. I know I say this every week because I donate blood all the time. The blood banks are in dire shortages right now, and they really, really need your help. And it doesn't cost you a thing except for a little bit of time. And it makes you feel better about helping your fellow human. And guys, it gets you out of doing any household chores for 24 hours. So do it on Saturday morning, and then you won't have to do anything on Saturday. Or actually do it on Sunday morning, and then you can watch the games and say, sorry, honey, I can't help you today because I donated blood. So there you go. There's some incentive for you. So please make sure to email your suggestions, including requests to be who you want me to come invite on the show. Or if you want to be on the show, please email me at rockandcodeworld@csharpcorner.com. And with that, I'll see you next week for the anniversary show.